Hi, everyone.
Hi all.
Hello,
So,
Sheila and Harvey.
Hi, hi.
Robert
Hi.
Schumann, the relationship between Robert and Clara, I mean, it's quite famous. I don't need to go into all the details about it, but I think in the history of music, there's been no other muse quite like Clara to Robert. Um, there's a wonderful interview with the pianist Mitsuko Uchida on YouTube at the Berlin Philharmonic. She was playing the Schumann piano concerto, and it's a wonderful interview. It's about 10 minutes long, and she talks about this inspiration that Clara provided to Robert, and she said plainly that every piece that Schumann had written was influenced by Clara and his love for Clara. And they started off a little strangely. They were in the same house, on her father's house, and then they fell in love, and it caused, as you can imagine, caused all sorts of problems. But this period that they were separated, he was so prolific, and so these pieces that came out of him are masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. And I pulled a quote from. This is a review of actually the biography that I have right here. You can't see it in the light. It's a biography that's fairly recent by author Judith Chernyk, and none other than Jeremy Denk reviewed it in the New York Times in November of 2018. And Jeremy in this review was speaking about depicting love in music, essentially. And I thought that was very apropos with the subject tonight. So here's a quote from just Jeremy Denk's review of this Schumann biography, and you should check it out on the New York Times website. Depicting love through music may seem all too easy a job, especially for a composer born in 1810, when brilliant romantics seemed to be bursting from wombs all over Europe. If you find a good love poem and write a catchy melody, you might well be done in time for dinner. But as in real life, capturing and prolonging love in music is tricky. Sentiment cloys, melodies repeat. Before you know it, instead of complexity of love is felt, you get a greeting card. Schumann was not scientific by nature, but in this respect, he was a master cultivator. He was able to distill in small bits of music, usually self-enclosed like emotive petri dishes, these unbelievable concoctions of frustration, beauty, bitterness, burning need, and radiant joy. I think that's it really sums it up in Jeremy Denk's always charming way and witty way. It's to say he's just pouring his love into the music. Yes, I mean it could be very cloying and just okay enough. It's like whatever. But Schumann, with his inventiveness and frankly his quirkiness, brings all of these emotions together in this amazing fashion. And the early work, the first work that we started out with, the Davidsbündlertänze. This is the dance of the League of David, and we spoke about that, the League of David being, the Philistines in music going against the artists, and he just concocted this in his brain. But that piece is really like the pinnacle of piano writing in the 19th century. If you ask any pianist which piece in the repertoire in the 19th century, the Davidsbündlertänze is up there with everything else. He wrote in these very, in these miniatures. He excelled in writing these brief bursts of melodies, and then it's the artist's job to sort of tie them together and connect them in a coherent way. And when we played Schumann previously, we had listened to some of Jonathan Biss actually playing some of the Davidsbündlertänze. It was that tying these short pieces together is challenging. But you get that, like the second movement, he starts off emphatically with actually the Florestan part of his personality. And Florestan, again, reflects what kind of personality? Anyone? Eusebius and Florestan. Florestan is the energetic, full of love and just very, pedal to the metal emotions, Florestan, where Eusebius is the more dreamlike side of his personality. So you start off with Florestan in David's Bundlatense, and then the second movement is the most beautiful little movement. And he brings it back at the end of the cycle, and it's just the shifting of between the two personalities is always very challenging for the performer. And I think I mentioned previously in a show that in this, when Schumann first published these pieces, he ascribed each movement either a Florestan or Eusebius moniker at the end of it. And then in a subsequent publication, he decided to remove those allusions. So here he goes alternating between these two facets of his personality throughout David's Bundlatense. How did we like Mr. Zacharias? He's a wonderful pianist. He's not on the tip of everybody's tongue. But in Germanic repertoire, he's such an amazing pianist. And unfortunately, he was supposed to start our season this year, and I was looking forward to welcoming him back. But he's such a beautiful pianist, especially in Germanic repertoire, Schumann, Beethoven, especially. And I thought his performance was really wonderful. Does anybody else have reflections on that performance?
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So early on, in Robert's and Clara's relationship, when they were separated and her father was forbidding them from being together, they would exchange secret letters occasionally, back and forth. I don't know how they did get back and forth, and they would occasionally see each other when Clara was touring, and they would do it very secretly. But I wanted to read from a letter that Robert wrote Clara just after he wrote the David's Bundlatense. And he writes, "The past 2 weeks were the most terrible. Everything looked black or blood-stained around me. I thought I'd have to take my own life. Evil spirits took hold of me. I was overcome by one thing after another: the distance from you, your father's malicious actions, the slow progress of my affairs here. I imagined death would be easy and thought, then come. But truly, Clara, believe me, among all these unhappy thoughts, a heavenly vision arose, an image of faithfulness and love. That is what you are to me, and you stood before me in your noble simplicity. I'll whisper once again to the person who closes my eyes. Only one person held sway over my life so completely and drew me so completely into her innermost being. And I've always adored and loved that person above all else."
That's what you will love.
So his love for her was so profound, and she for him as well. And and we'll talk about later in life when things became more difficult in the relationship. But the second piece, and that leads us to the second piece, the Arabesque, which is perhaps his most famous piano work, and he wrote that at her request to play. She wanted some pieces to play at a recital that were pleasing to the ear, and he composed the Arabesque, and it's just a lovely little piece, And again, we bring back Arnaldo Cohen, who was on the series quite a bit back in the early aughts and late 90s, and a really wonderful pianist, amazing technique. I worked with him early in my career, and has retired from performing and teaches at Indiana University right now. So does anybody remember Arnaldo Cohen from the series? Yes, Edith. Yeah. And just one of the most he was Brazilian, very charming and lovely man, and had this incredible technique, really incredible technique. I wanted to play some, since we were focused on the early period. The other big cycle of Schumann's during this time was Carnival. And I wanted to play a few movements from Carnival, basically showing Eusebius and Florestan. In this piece, he actually labels the movement Eusebius and Florestan in this piece. So I wanted to play a performance of Jeremy Dank from October 25th, 2015. And there are three movements from Carnival. First is Eusebius, then Florestan, and then a movement called Coquetta. So here's Carnival, and this is Opus 9.
Stay there. Whatever you think.
So you see, what was that? That was 5 minutes. These three very different emotions in music. The very brief things. So you have Eusebius to begin, the dreamlike playing, and then immediately into Florestan, and then this playful, flirtatious coquette movement right after it. It's, you know, and this is what's wonderful about him and what's also challenging about him, because it's constantly shifting here and there and shifting here and there. What do you think of Jeremy's playing? Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Very sensitive.
Sensitive. Sensitive.
Yeah.
It's very hard as a performer to just, as I say, just shift on a dime to get immediately the character. You don't work your way into it. It's bam, right off the bat. You're shot out of a cannon to change these characters as a performer. It's very, very challenging, and the writing is so it's quirky. It's quirky, you know. So then we played Frauenliebe und Leben. Do we know that song cycle? No.
No.
Goodness gracious.
No.
Bernarda Fink, you know, she's an incredible singer. She's sort of at the end of her career now, but we were fortunate to have her twice here. She was involved in the Berlin Philharmonic's Pelléas and Melisande project. She's a wonderful leader singer, and I really encourage you to go out and get her Schumann recordings with Roger Vignoles. They're quite wonderful, really, really wonderful. And Frauenliebe und Leben, here's Schumann. You know, he wrote it right before they were getting married, and it's really about like how love destroys a woman. The text. This is what he chooses as the text for this cycle. I mean, you know, it's to say that it's conflicted would be an understatement. But in this period, you know, he writes Dichterliebe. He writes the Liederkreis cycles, which, you know, this in a matter of a couple of years before they get together, he writes these major cycles, arguably three of the greatest cycles in the history of classical music, all for, you know, for Clara and anticipation of being with Clara. I wanted to play some of the Liederkreis Opus 39, and these are the Eichendorff Liederkreis. Opus 24 is on texts of Heine, and I would say that they're less performed than the Opus 39. But the Opus 39, for me, is truly perhaps my favorite song cycle in the literature. And I came to love Lieder in my life by studying this in college. I studied this particular cycle in college, and I just from that point on, I've loved Lieder. So I wanted to play two songs from that cycle. The first song is In der Fremde, in a foreign land. And then the second one is called Mondnacht. And I want you to listen in particular to Mondnacht. I'm going to ask you afterwards, you'll be quizzed. I want you to tell me what meter that is. Is it in 2? Is it in 3? Is it in 4? Is it in 5? Tell me what you think it's in, okay? So this is a performance from November 29th, 2009 with the mezzo-soprano Sasha Cook, who sings at the Met now, and Ken Noda, who is a longtime assistant to James Levine at the Met. So here's In der Fremde and Mondnacht from Schumann's Liederkreis Opus 39.
Aus der Heimat hinter den Blitzen rot, da kommen die Wolken her. Aber Vater und Mutter sind lange tot, es kennt mich dort keiner mehr. Wie bald, ach wie bald kommt die stille Zeit, die schöne Alteinsamkeit. Und keiner kennt mich mehr hier. Und keiner kennt mich mehr Es war, als hätte die Erde stillgeküsst. Doch sing im Blütenschimmer von Träumen
Good stuff. So, what meter is Mondnacht in?
Seemed to be an extra beat in there.
Yeah,
5/4?
I kept hearing 3 and 4 sometimes together, and at the ending I thought I heard 5, but I don't have a score, so I'm not looking at it. But it was shifting.
Shifts. There's some has this kind of 6/8 feeling and a lot of 5/4 feeling.
That's
I
interesting.
was hearing 5/4, but then it would go. Then it sometimes it felt like it was in 4, and I don't know. I couldn't follow it.
Yeah, I had some form of 3, but then I couldn't follow either.
this is my point. Yeah, he's messing with us. And it's just this floating, this sheer beauty of the moonlight. And he's messing with us. So let's take a look at the score.
Which you just happen to have available.
Just in my back pocket here.
Yeah. Oh.
Ooh. So it's in 3.
3/8.
But this is where he gets a little tricky here, because it's ba 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 ba. He throws an implied triplet right there, and that's what's messing us up.
Yeah.
But it's all barred in 3. It's just very, we talk about hemiola, but it's not that this isn't a different rhythm. All he's doing is displacing beats by an 8th note, by a single 8th note. Dee da 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 dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da da dee da dee da. It's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And he, this is, Jeremy also was speaking in that review, and you should go read that review of this biography. You should also read the biography. It's a very good one. About Schumann's mastery of syncopation and how he doesn't do things expectedly and blurs the lines a bit with syncopation. And that's exactly what he's doing there in that bar. And it's just wonderful, wonderful music. Did you like that?
Yeah, it was really beautiful, and such a wonderful singer too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sasha.
I don't know her.
Sorry,
I don't know her.
Bob. Did you?
Yeah, I was going to say the singer really was terrific. She made it sound so fresh. It was wonderful.
She was very young here. So what I know Ken quite well. Ken is a wonderful pianist and had a solo piano career before he got involved at the Met. Ken Noda, the pianist, and he would accompany young singers at the Met and take them on recital tours, and he still does that to this day. He was pitching me a young singer. We went to an Uchida recital at Carnegie Hall, and he was talking to me about a young singer who I loved, but they were going to do a program of some opera arias with songs, and I'm so committed to Lieder that I don't want that. I really want Lieder. But Sasha, at this time, I mean, she was a kid. She's a young singer there. She's like 25, 26 when this recording was made. And so her big break at the Met was for Dr. Atomic. She was in Dr. Atomic. And she goes back occasionally, but she's got this beautiful, rich mezzo voice. It's so wonderful. I had her out to my festival at my last job out in the Hamptons, and she's just lovely. I mean, a really, really, really wonderful singer. And to do this cycle as a young kid like that must have been frightening, frankly, for her to do that. But I thought she was wonderful. That particular cycle is done for both male and female voice. So baritone for the male, mezzo for the female. And I've got a recording of, which I love, and I've just grown to love this recording. It's a Fischer-Dieskau recording with Alfred Brendel. But Fischer-Dieskau, it was in the 80s. It was at the end of his career. But really, really wonderful, wonderful recording with Brendel. You know, when you have a pianist like Brendel playing the accompaniment, playing the piano part, you know, it's a real gift. It's truly a gift. So here they are. They get married, and we played the piano quintet. And we were speaking before we went live about, you know, the exuberance of that piano quintet. It's just boom, energy, just bristling with energy. And he wrote that, you know, they were married in 1840. That piece is 1842. And then 1844, he has his next episode. This earlier emotional episode that he had earlier in his life comes back, where he's hearing voices and having problems. And you know, they experienced only a few years of real happiness in their marriage. And he, you know, Schumann deteriorated and deteriorated and deteriorated, still composed some really wonderful works. And then in 1854, he threw himself into the Rhine River and was rescued by some fishermen, and then decided to commit himself into an asylum. And he was put into an asylum outside of Bonn because the notion of being near Beethoven's birthplace was appealing to him. And he spent the rest of his life there. And really, and slowly detached himself from reality. Clara never visited him. They wrote letters back and forth, and his doctor encouraged her not to write him because it exacerbated his symptoms. And so she was just distraught, and Brahms would go visit him, and Joachim. And by the end, toward the end of his life, he couldn't even speak. He was speaking gibberish and was just completely out of it. And Clara, then at his deathbed, Clara and Brahms went to him, and they were with him when he passed. But it was horrible, absolutely horrible, horrible end to a remarkable life. And Clara remained devoted to him. And then, you know, throughout this time, she had to tour. She had to tour because they had 7 kids, and she had to support the family. So she was touring all over Europe to make money so she could support her family. And it just really, really was heart-wrenching for her. And you know, we spoke the last time about her as a composer. I mean, you know, Clara, during their time, Clara was the star of that relationship. Schumann was known. Clara was a superstar pianist. It was very well respected all over Europe. And as you know, we spoke about with Brahms. I mean, she was the sounding board for Brahms. Brahms would send her scores, say, hey, what do you think about this? What are your impressions on this piece? He respected her. He had the utmost respect for Clara. And she composed in her youth, and she composed, interestingly, I'm going to play something, until her last piece that she wrote was 1853. So just before Robert had his problems, she wrote a piece for violin and piano, the 3 Romances. And she didn't compose the rest of her life, but what she did was she arranged some of Schumann's works in different instrumentations, and she would just take to arranging other pieces. But the 3 Romances, Opus 22, they're the last piece that she ever wrote. But I thought we should hear some of it and hear what Clara had to say compositionally. And of course, obviously in 1853, in the midst of these problems with her husband, she's composing this music. So I thought it would be fascinating to listen to it. So let's hear this. Where is my, hold on. Sorry. Did not prepare. There it is. Okay, so here's a performance of a young Korean violinist raised in Germany, Clara Yumi Kong and Yol Sun on piano. This is a performance at the Mariinsky Theater of Clara Schumann's Three Romances, Opus 22. Charming. What'd you think?
Surprised I've never heard it. I play the violin. I feel like I should have heard that, and if someone didn't bring it to me, I should have found it by now. I'm really surprised I didn't. That's just as charming as I don't know, many other violin sonatas I've heard.
I also agree that it was quite lovely. I'm probably idiosyncratic, but I found the playing somewhat monochromatic. There wasn't a great variation in the sound and the coloration. I thought the playing was just okay, not great.
I thought too much schmaltz, not enough passion.
With the performance of the performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was so much potential.
Maybe next time. But you see that, Clara was no slouch. Clara was a really incredible woman, an incredibly talented human being. And I think what Brian speaks to a little bit is that, this is the nature, of what we're talking about lately with male-dominated classical music and things. You know, basically, you know, she's not out there because people didn't put her out there. You know, I think her piano trio is quite wonderful. It's a really wonderful piece. You know, it's hard. I often talk about the repertoire of instruments and things like that. And artists have all sorts of things to choose from, to play. We were talking about that with the Bartok Out of Doors. How come nobody really plays that? It's really great stuff. Well, I mean, there's such a wealth of piano repertoire that maybe somebody's choosing to go in another direction. But I think what's happening now in the world and in classical music is that these pieces are being played. They're getting you know, attention paid to them. These composers, these talented women composers, talented composers of color, all of this stuff. I mean, it's important. But Clara Schumann was one of the most important musicians of the 19th century, and that's not an overstatement. Not an overstatement at all. Just her impact on the concert stage alone would put her in that category. But the muse that she was to Robert, her own compositions, and what she did for Brahms it's unimaginable. I mean, it's really, really incredible. She's it's an amazing story. I encourage you to learn more about Schumann and Clara Schumann as well. And especially, please listen to those song cycles. You should know Frauenliebe and Leben. That's a major, major, major piece in classical music. And Liederkreis, would not steer you wrong. The Opus 39 Liederkreis is one of the most breathtaking pieces of music ever. I love that cycle. I mean, it's just incredible, that cycle.
The question I always have is, if modern psychiatry had been available to Robert, would he have suffered less from his torments, and would he have would his genius have been as available to him?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, would the great trade-off have been?
Right.
What would the great trade-off have been? And we'll never know. We will never know.
It's an excellent question.
I don't know. Question. I mean, it's, you know, as somebody who studied, you know, mental health my whole career, it's the great question that is asked of many, many geniuses.
Yeah.
You know, throughout the throughout history, and even into the 20th century. And Robert was such an incredible example of that, and we'll never know. Unanswered question, unanswerable question.
There's question as to what brought it on, whether it was syphilis that brought it on, or was it always within him?
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know. When he was in the asylum later on, he pointed to syphilis. He said that he had syphilis when he was 20 or 21.
But there's also some question as to whether when he was at the baths, didn't he go to he went to one of the spas.
Spas, yeah.
And there is some evidence that, you know, breathing the air with the lithium salts in the air, which is what we still treat, you know, bipolar disorder, that he did get some relief.
Right.
So who knows? I mean, it's just
hard to say.
It's unanswerable, but
it's unanswerable. But the question of whether he would, whether he could produce what he produced without having that within him, it's an excellent question.
Don't know. Yeah.
Question.
But he wasn't alone. I mean,
no.
It plagued many geniuses.
Yes.
Question: If he had syphilis, Clara didn't?
Yeah. Good question. Good question.
Well, and from what I don't know a whole lot about, I'm not a student of this, but I gather they had a pretty intensive sex life.
Well, 8 kids.
Yeah, they had a lot of kids.
Even more than just
Yes.
kids. He documented it, I think.
Yes, he did in his diaries. Yes.
Yeah.
His
Great
diaries
passion.
are
That's
extensive.
pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to get back to the question of women composers. There have been a few. The Bard Festival this year topic was supposed to be Nadia Boulanger. It will be next summer. So if anybody's interested in seeing a series of concerts and music regarding Nadia Boulanger and her students, many students and women. And you can go back to the 17th century, Barbara Strozzi, if you want to hear some really beautiful madrigals and other music from then. But yes, very few women composers do we know.
Yeah, I mean, Boulanger, I mean, how she affected so many people's lives. I mean, all these composers, she had such an enormous impact at Fontainebleau, you know, with all of these musicians. It's incredible her impact on 20th century music.
So next August, go to Bard College for the weekend. Spend 2 weekends there. You can go to 10 concerts and really get knocked out.
Yes, if you want to do anything intensively, Leon Botstein, that's the way to go.
That's right.
So, any other thoughts on the Schumanns? I would also, I mentioned this in a previous show, the symphonies, you know, he gets knocked for not being able to write in large form, you know, that he excelled in miniatures. But the Rhenish Symphony especially, to me, is one of the great symphonies of the 19th century. It's a fantastic piece and very original, quite original. But yeah, and they're not on the, you know, the orchestras are not programming them very much. They're just not. It's a shame. They all the war horses, but the Rhenish Symphony, the first time I heard that piece, I was blown away. And the fourth movement, there's 5 movements in that. There's 5-minute movements. The fourth movement with the chorale of the trombone chorale that starts, oh my God, it's like this, it's an amazing piece. It's amazing. So, anyone else?
Maybe he was misdiagnosed. Maybe he didn't have syphilis because Clara didn't have it. And maybe he had something else. I don't know what else would be, though.
I don't know.
Well, he definitely had the signs of bipolar disorder.
Yes. Yes. Well, without further ado, thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks for another great night.
Thank you, Derek.
Next week, we go back to Papa Haydn. And then that begins us on our trek to Beethoven for the rest of the year. Stay tuned. But thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.
Good night.
All right. Have a good night. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.